What's up, guys? It's Andrea and I'm back again with another video. Let me just let y'all know now, I have been super excited to film this specific video because I feel like everybody needs to know about this rotation, period. I'm just gonna go ahead and apologize in advance if this video runs over. Just bear with me. Truly, I really loved going to my psych rotation, specifically because it was just a different type of rotation. It's different than versus going to your ICU, going to your med-surg floors. It's completely different. So if you have not been to a psych rotation, I suggest you keep watching this video. And even if you have, just keep watching because this is great. Okay, for this semester, I was in my mental health rotation on 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. When I was 3 weeks off, I was on my ICU clinical. And so when I was 3 weeks on with my mental health, I truly learned a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things, and I just have so much. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and just get into it. Okay, so I actually want to start off first by talking about a story that I had or something that I experienced within my rotation. Just bear with me. So with this rotation, we actually had to do so we had to go to a psychiatric hospital on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But in my first rotation, so in my first 3 weeks of the semester being in this rotation, I had to do a community, a community setting type thing. Just a story, an experience that I had was being at this community site, being with the nurse, shadowing the nurse all day. We had a patient come in, and the patient was like, I don't know how to explain it. So they would have like new intake patients, but mainly this specific community facility was for patients to make sure they were staying on their medicine, just like a regular kind of doctor's office type thing. But this specific patient that we had come in that day was a new intake, meaning that she had never been on any type of psychiatric medication, never had seen any type of psychiatric help, none of that. So with that being said, with her being a new intake, the nurse and I, we didn't know what to expect. All day we were seeing, just patients that, needed maybe an EKG to make sure they weren't having any heart issues because of their medications. Like, it was just like the simple, basic checkup stuff. Well, when this patient came in, I was definitely shocked, and I didn't know how to, because I'd never been in this type of situation before. I've never had this happen before. And it's all textbook stuff. Like, we read about this stuff in the textbook all the time. But when, of course, we know when we actually see this stuff or when we're actually experiencing it, it's like, crap, like, what do I do? So guys, basically what happened is when we were in this kind of checkup office with this specific patient, she ended up having a visual as well as auditory active hallucination. Mind you, I want to let you guys know, the nurse that I was with said that in his time being a nurse, he had never really had a patient actively hallucinate in his presence. So this was new for the both of us. So just kind of make a long story short, with this patient having this hallucination, the nurse just had her basically, explain what the hallucination was, what was going on, what the auditory hallucinations were. The key big factor, if you guys don't know, when your patients are having auditory hallucinations, it is very important to figure out what specifically these auditory hallucinations are saying to these patients, because you never know. It could be suicidal hallucinations, it could be homicidal hallucinations. You just want to make sure that you keep that environment as safe as possible. So just figuring out not only, like I said, the visual hallucinations, but the key factor is knowing what these voices are saying, because you never know. You honestly never know. So I don't want to go too far into that story, but I do want to say that was, like I said, definitely a huge thing for me. I definitely learned from it. And I think at that point is when I became even more interested in mental health, making sure not only my mental health is intact, but just the people around me. And I guess when you see things like that, like I said, when you actually see and experience things and see this is actually happening, like, this is just not in movies, this is just not textbook stuff, like, this stuff is actually happening. I may sound crazy right now, but it's really real. So mental health is super important. And just to kind of wrap that story up, we ended up taking the patient out of the office setting that we were in, because she didn't feel safe because of what she saw visually, her hallucination. She did not feel safe. So we ended up leaving that office setting and went into another room. Now, as far as my psychiatric hospital that I was actually at, that was definitely a huge experience. Again, another eye-opening factor for me as well as my colleagues. It was just different for us, like I said, versus your normal med surg, your ICU, your labor and delivery, neonatal, all those units. First of all, the hospital setup is completely different. I do want to say this. This is really important to know because I had no idea, and when we walked onto the unit, I was like, this is different. So let me say this. Again, I can see this video is already gonna get long. I apologize in advance. So of course, you guys, we know that when we are on those floors, the units that I just listed, at those hospitals, those patients for the most part stay in their room. They are taken care of in their room. Now, when we got to the psych hospital, the psychiatric hospital, the first thing I noticed immediately, all of these patients were out of the room for the most part. They were not in their room. They were all in a common area. Every single last one of them for the most part were out. And so I think that's what really, that's the first thing that stood out to me, that I noticed the difference being at another, on another unit versus, mental health. And I was kind of, I would guess for the most part, I was trying to, this was in the beginning of the semester, so I didn't know anything about, group there. Like I didn't really know much about mental health. I didn't know about anything. It was the beginning of the semester. I was clueless. My first rotation was in mental health. It wasn't in ICU. So I was just taken back by a lot. That first rotation day, I was super overwhelmed. Now, for me to sit and compare my first day to my last day, huge difference, huge difference. My first day, not only me, but basically my entire rotation, my entire clinical group, we were all very nervous. And that is me being completely 100% honest with you guys. We were very nervous because I'm gonna say for me personally, I'm gonna just talk to myself. I never really had to have, or I've never in life had a conversation, let's just say with a patient that has schizophrenia. And being that I had been in class maybe for a week or so prior to that actual rotation, we were taught the biggest key is therapeutic communication. So I think I was just so nervous that I was gonna say the wrong things to these patients, or I was gonna just not come off as effective as I wanted to them. And I think that's what really made me super nervous. And so the way these rotations work, when you're at, or when I don't know about other programs, but when we're at a psychiatric hospital, when we're at a rotation, we do no type of physical assessment, none of that. Even the nurses, for the most part, they don't really do physical assessments. It's really all about the mental status exams. And that within itself is a whole nother video. If you've been in psych, you know what I'm talking about, the mental status exams. So what we would do is every time we would go in a rotation, for the most part, every time, we would go in and we would speak to the nurses at the nurse's station, and we would say basically which patient is, I don't want to say stable enough, but which patient will be most cooperative in us having a one-to-one interview, which was something else that's really different. Normally when we're at our other rotations, like I said, the med surg, all of that, our instructor will come up to the floor. We'll pick our patient, like I said, days before, things like that. But in mental health, we get our patient right then and there. And our instructors never come up to the floor. When we go and we get our patient that we can interview, basically what we do is we just interview, we appropriately approach that patient in a very generous, kind, opening, warming, welcoming manner. And basically, just say, hey, like, would you mind if we have like a 20-minute conversation, things like that. So once the patient agrees, we basically move to an area that not only we could be seen by our peers, but we could be seen by the nurses as well. So you just basically want it to be in an area where you will seen at all times, not hidden in the back, where nobody could see, just for the safety of the environment. We would interview the patients. Every single story that I was told throughout this entire rotation, I've never forgotten, like I said, and that is why I like, ever since I started this rotation, I think I really started realizing mental health as a very important factor in life, because you just never know. You never know the little things that could affect people's mental health. I guess something else that I want to add is like some of these patients, just so you guys know, if you've never been and you are going to go to a mental health floor, some of these patients, sometimes, not all the time, they can get combative, they can get upset. I've seen it, I saw, like, I didn't experience it, but I saw it on the floor. Not only these patients getting upset with other patients on the floor, but getting upset with the nurses, striking at nurses. Just a very, very environment where you need to be on high alert. But I do want to say, like I said, to compare, I said this like 5 minutes ago, but to compare it to my last day, I absolutely love psychiatric nursing. It is something I definitely see myself doing later on down the line. Just because I actually had a patient tell me that he felt like I had listened to him, or I paid attention to him and to his story more than anybody that he had ever talked to. Now, I know it's important not to take those things into, keep those types of things in mind, but I used to always, every time I would drive to my psych clinicals, this is a little side story, but every time I would drive to my psych clinicals, I would always pray to God, and I would always say, God, can you just allow me to be a blessing in one of my patients' lives today? Even if it's just, me being an opening ear to them, just, I pray that you allow that to happen. And like I said, when that patient that day had said, I just feel like, you really care about what you're doing. I can tell that you're very passionate about psychiatric nursing. He actually thought, again, these patients are sometimes confused. So he actually thought that I was an actual nurse already. And so he was like, I know you really care about this. You're very passionate about this. And so I think that's what really stood out to me, that I truly enjoy being in that type of, environment. On my last day, as part of a huge assignment, a huge grade that we needed, we had to do a health teaching. And so basically we had to just get all the patients that were on the unit that day and sit them down in the day area, and we had to teach them something. To talk about that real quick. So I think we had about 24 patients at the time that we were teaching, that were on the unit at that time, that wanted to actually cooperate and wanted to be in the day area. And what I think we taught them relaxation techniques. So the assignment was you had to teach the group something that would be beneficial to all of them, something that we thought was an issue or something they could better work on as a whole. And so, of course, relaxation techniques, because a lot of them, bipolar, schizophrenia, depressed, suicidal, things like that, relaxation is a big key. And so we had taught them that. And to talk about that, when I was talking, because we did it in a group of 3, when I was talking, one of the patients had stood up. He had schizophrenia, and he said something that had absolutely, it didn't relate to the subject at hand at all. Now, had that been my first day, I would have freaked out, because as he was standing up, as he was saying what he had to say, he stood up, and we were standing in the front, and the patients were, out in front of us. And so he stood up, he said what he said, and like I said, had that been the first day, I would have freaked out right then and there. But I wasn't, it didn't bother me. I knew that he said it for a reason. Something that we were teaching triggered him to say whatever he said, and he actually just walked off. And so we just let that go, we let it be, we continued to teach, and he actually ended up coming back to the group and participated in the teaching as well. But guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I don't want to keep going on. I have so much to say as it is, because I really enjoy this rotation. It was definitely an eye-opener. I learned so much, I saw so much, and speaking to the patients one-on-one was definitely something that I feel like really gave me even more, made me more passionate about nursing in general. So I was really appreciative of that. I really, I just don't know what else to say. I really liked it. Hopefully, you got some insight onto how my rotation went this semester. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay with it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.